Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to that GD show, everyone. Dale, is that the best intro music you've ever heard on a show?
Oh, it's fantastic.
we have so many people asking us where that music's from and commenting on it, and it's a fun.
I
found that.
I wonder, Ethan, maybe you can answer this after the show, if you do have any recordings of what it looks like backstage while that music is playing. I would love to see a montage of Dave and I bopping around.
I'm always moving. Genevieve, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm really excited to be here, and I'm very excited for this conversation, particularly because midterms are around the corner, and there is a lot to talk about when it comes to secularism in America and the media.
Yes, indeed. It's a scary time. It's a serious time, and I'm anxious to dig into that with you, Dale, and get your take on things. And hopefully you can give us some positive vibes for the future, because at times I don't have them. But everyone, thank you for tuning in. As always, invite you to like and subscribe to the channel if this is your first time here and you haven't done that. If you appreciate what we do, we always appreciate your support on Patreon. It keeps the lights on. I thank you for being here and being consistent, faithful viewers. We got a good group of people that tune in every Monday night, and we appreciate that. Genevieve, how do we call him? We'd love to hear from you tonight. If you have a question for our guest or just want to talk to Genevieve and I about something on your mind, what's that number, Genevieve? How do they reach us?
Yeah, well, if you want to chat with us, you can just call the number 217-375-9933. Our lines are open. We've got amazing call screeners. They're super cool. You can also just talk to them for a little bit while you wait to talk to us.
They're nice. So call in and grill Dale with your toughest questions. Dale, you and I haven't met in person. We actually were, as we found out later, we had tables across from each other at the American Atheist Conference back earlier this year. I was busy signing books. You were busy talking. Every time I looked over there, you were talking to someone. I know my partner Bevan got over and talked to you at one point, but I never did get to talk to you, and I really regret that. But I've been aware of you and what you've been doing for a long time, and I've really been anxious to get you on the show. So I'm glad we finally got you.
Well, I appreciate it. Glad to be here.
As Genevieve said, the timing's pretty good. Hey, Greg Markowski, thank you for that super chat. Thanks for the show. Everyone vote, damn it. That's right. That's the one thing we can do to make our voice heard. So thank you for your support, Greg. You're always so faithful there. Dale, what I was trying to think of how to in fact, I listened back to yesterday. I was listening to your interview with Seth Andrews from a few months ago, and I was struggling with how to identify you, what to call you. And I found that Seth had the same problem, because you are about as diverse as they come. And how do you identify yourself? What is it that Dale McGowan is and does?
Well, at the moment, I'm mostly an editor. I am mostly a digital editor for the media company Only Sky.
Okay.
And I found it, my career path has been really weird. It's been really...
Mine was too, bro.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, just it wasn't what I expected. I don't know what I expected, but I kept trying to find the next thing and got into a lot of interesting stuff. But right now, that's what I'm focused on, is working with a really amazing crew of writers and podcasters and videographers and other creatives, and trying to create something new in the secular space.
And it's exciting. You and I have talked about that recently. We connected. We had a guest recently. I remember Phil Ferguson, Genevieve. He was on a couple of months ago, and he's the one that prompted me to look back again at Only Sky. I was aware of it and familiar with it. And Phil suggested to me as we were chatting, Dave, you ought to write for them. And I contacted her. Phil put us together, Dale, I think.
Yeah.
And you and I had a phone call, a video call a few months ago, and decided that I would love to. You invited me to come on and write for Only Sky, and I'm very excited about starting that process. I've been tardy in getting my paperwork in, as you know.
That's all right.
By the way, did you get the 2 documents I sent in this week?
I did.
Week? Okay.
I did. I just saw them. Yeah.
So I think we're good to go. So
I think so. Yeah.
So we're announcing it here tonight that I'm going to start writing for Only Sky, and I'm really looking forward to that because I love writing, and I needed another outlet for that since I wrote my memoir last year, and I'm kind of working on a second book, but I'm not as disciplined with that as I need to be. So this will cause me to be disciplined, which, as you know, as a writer, you can't write unless you're disciplined.
That's true.
You can't just wait for the inspiration to strike. You'll have writer's block for the rest of your life. So I want to talk more about Only Sky as we get into it, but take us back. So you've had this diverse, varied career. You've got multiple degrees in different avenues. What was the young Dale like? What was Dale McGowan growing up? How did you get into this secular space that you've been working in for so long?
Well, it was maybe not what you might expect, because I eventually got into music, and that was my career for many years, teaching at the college level, conducting orchestras, and teaching music theory and music history. And I was a musician from the time I was in 5th grade, but I was also a science kid, and just Carl Sagan was it for me, and I was just really sort of on those 2 tracks from the beginning. And I actually held off being a music major in college for a long time because I was actually psych major for a while, and then I finished a degree in evolutionary anthropology because I was fascinated by it and I wanted to understand it better. But then just at the last minute, going into my senior year, I said, I should have been a music major. And
hard right turn.
I hadn't taken a single class, a single music class. And I went into the department chair and said, is it too late? And he said, yeah, it's way too late to start the major. And I said, what if I test out of some stuff? And so I tested out of some stuff and added a year and finished the major. I did almost nothing but music at the end. And then got into, got a master's in conducting, and got my first job conducting a college orchestra in Minnesota.
Wow.
So, that was and then did that for 15 years. But at the same time, taught in the interdisciplinary core at the college. They had a freshman seminar course that was built around writing and critical thinking. And so that really started to bring that back in my my interest and my focus. And after 15 years, I decided I really want to write full time. I really want to do that. And then I went looking for the topic area. What is it that really needs to be focused on right now? And secular parenting, nobody was, there had not yet been a book that was focused on non-religious parenting at that point. Sort of a comprehensive attempt to tackle that. So I had a very difficult time finding a publisher, not because of any bigotry, but because they didn't think there was a market for it. And I showed them all all the survey data we had, everything that we knew, and the fact that there's nothing out there. And they said, well, the fact that there's nothing out there means there's no market for it.
Right.
That's what they said.
Mhm.
And so something like, I think it was, 20 something publishers turned it down. And then finally, one of the New York publishers, Amicom Books, picked it up and said, well, either there's no market or we're going to corner the market. And we cornered the market. So
Now, when
that
was
the
this?
beginning.
How long ago was this? Give us a date.
That
Let's
was
start.
07. Yeah. I got
Okay.
the contract in 06. And then the book came out in 07, Parenting Beyond Belief. And
Okay.
I knew that my kids were still relatively young at that point. So I knew that I wanted to bring a lot of voices into it, that it wasn't going to be something that I could write as any sort of expert. So I brought in 27 contributors.
Oh, wow.
Wrote all separate chapters, and Richard Dawkins contributed a chapter, and Penn Jillette, and but then we also had psychologists and educators and everyday parents, scientists, contributing on all this whole range of topic areas, and it went really well. Did a follow-up called Raising Freethinkers, which was a more practical guide to it, with built around 100 questions, Q&A, and activities, and things to do with the kids, and how to answer particular questions. So
Genevieve, when you have your kids, you'll have some resources there.
I know. I was just thinking about, I'm at that age right now where I've got a lot of friends who are having kids, or they have kids that are a few years old now. And it's astounding how common it seems to be that this idea is, oh, well, even if you're not really a believer, you send your kids to Sunday school so they can learn morals and values. And
Right.
It's kind of like why in some places this is sort of just the default way of educating your children.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of parents think, my partner Bevan was never really religious as a young parent, but she felt like, I need to get these kids in a church so that they can be exposed to religion. Now, part of her reasoning was so that when they're older and people come at them with religious dogma, that they'll have some experience and know how to combat that, and how to come back to people with that. So, but there is, I think, in other circles, there's that default position. I need to get some morality in my kids. Where can I find that? Oh, church, of course, because that's the only place where morality is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just such a false notion. So it's really great to have those resources. I want to say thanks to Gary Booker. Hi, guys. I'll check out Only Sky. Love you guys. So there's a new fan right there already. And I want to, Dana Strongberg, I probably said that wrong. Dana, I'm sorry. Thank you for your super chat. I can't thank you enough for Parenting Beyond Belief and Raising Free Thinkers. In addition to your podcast, has been invaluable to navigating issues raising free thinkers in the Midwest. Hi, isn't that great to hear?
Oh, that's amazing to see. That's just so great. Thank you so much for that.
Doesn't that make you feel good?
It really does. Yeah. It's just, I never get tired of that.
No, I know. It's amazing. And I love that you now I want to, you said you went to a space that was empty. What was your relationship with religion like growing up? I mean, why were you drawn to this space as a secular person?
Well, I grew up in a sort of nominally Christian family. We went to church on Sunday, but it wasn't really a presence in the home at all. But it was good. It gave me sort of, and it was, kind of a relatively liberal Lutheran church in St. Louis, and gave me a kind of low-key, brimstone-free exposure to Judeo-Christian ideas, which I do think is important. Religious literacy is important. It has nothing to do with morality. It has to do with sort of cultural literacy. And the other good thing is that my parents just really encouraged questions, and they really valued education. And my dad was fascinated by science, and so he was the one who would pull out the telescope and talk about the Big Bang and all those sorts of things. And I was just always fascinated by those questions. I never understood people who weren't fascinated by those questions, who just are sort of indifferent to the I was perfectly fine with somebody having religious answers. Just be interested,
Yeah, you
in-
haven't lived in the evangelical space where questioning is not encouraged,
right.
and
Yeah.
pat answers and certainty is the currency in that world.
Yeah, exactly. That I don't understand either. Either,
Yeah.
the sort of apathetic non-theist, I don't get that, and I don't get the unquestioning evangelical either. It's like I want to ask the questions and then drill down really hard because I was frustrated by the way the questions were always
Mm-hmm.
framed and answered. There was that implication that it's not that kind of question. When you start sort of drilling down and you want to get at the answer, they say, well, it's not that kind of question. It's something you feel in your heart. And it's just all this kind of, I wanted to actually know as close as I could get. Was there any way for me to ask the question in a way that could actually get me to an answer that I could have some kind of confidence in? Even if I'm never going to be certain. Is there any way that I can ask the question? And I finally got to the point, the thing that was sort of a breakthrough for me, probably in college, was recognizing that I didn't have to ask if God exists. I had to ask why people think he exists. What is it that's convincing other people? And then look at their reasoning.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really a different way. Instead of, going after that abstraction, it's like, is the thing that convinced them going to convince me? Or can I find a better explanation for why they believe that? And that's what ended up happening. I'd see one thing after another. I'd see that human psychology and motivated reasoning and all these things that we know about and perfectly understandable. It's hard to be a person,
Yeah.
It's hard to be a mortal person who, knows that this is the only life we get. That's the only world we get. There's no afterlife, that kind of thing. That's not easy. So my heart goes out to people who confront that basically unfair situation and say, I don't accept that. I'm going to, cling to something. I get that. I've been fortunate that I never really felt the need to do that. I felt safe. I felt, taken care of, felt supported. I got, a certain amount of education that allowed me to ask the questions and not feel like I was pulling the rug out from under myself. So that's really how I got into the spaces, simply by being fascinated by the questions.
And do you think that by and large, I mean, there's varied reasons, but you touched on it. Do you think that this need to create a different story or an ongoing story after death is the reason religion is so prevalent? Is that where the creation of it came from in your understanding as you examined it? And is that what's behind it?
I think that's the primary reason. I don't think there's another driver that I almost said that trumps that. That word has been destroyed.
I know.
It really has, that and the American flag.
Yeah, it's a perfectly good word, and I can't use it anymore. But there's no other. There are lots of other things. Like, I also think that the desire for universal justice is very important. The feeling that bad people will somehow get their comeuppance and good people will be rewarded. That's also powerful, but none of it's as powerful as mortality.
Why are we afraid of our mortality? Why are we afraid to die with nothing afterwards?
I think it can be phrased in strictly evolutionary terms. Animals that are not afraid to die don't pass on their genes.
Gotcha.
That's what it's been. If you were just, rushing into the predator's arms back in the day, then the gene for rushing into the predator's arms is not going to be passed on. So you end up over thousands, tens of thousands of generations, you end up with creatures that are afraid to die because they tend to live. So it's just a survival thing.
That makes sense.
Would it also maybe be fair to just boil it all down to, some sense of meaning or purpose? Something that I kind of run into quite often whenever I talk to anybody about their beliefs in an afterlife or in that cosmic justice. It's that, oh, well, if this is all there is, then what is the point? Oh, if nothing bad happens to you, if you disobey these commandments, then what is the point? I do think that there's that need for meaning and purpose that is sort of intrinsic in our own like monkey ape brains. And personally, I think that it's just the easiest way to find it is if somebody tells you, hi, here is your meaning and here is your purpose. You don't have to do the really hard work to find what that might be for yourself.
Yeah, no, I think that's, if you were going to define it as a three-legged stool, I think that would be it. You know, it's going to be mortality, justice, and purpose. You know, those are the things that ultimately the problems that religion is solving. And the meaning and purpose one is, I think it ends up being easier than the others, because all you have to do is really recognize that what you're dealing with is the difference between universal meaning, universal purpose, and self-made meaning.
Yeah.
And once you recognize that we really do constantly, everyone, you know, makes their own meaning. This is the thing that's meaningful for me. I can feel it. This is the thing that's not meaningful to me. I get into this career and it feels like a dead end, and it's not really feeding my, you know, soul in any significant way. Then I go over in this direction. And it's like, wow, I love getting out of bed every day. I love doing this, this new thing. Well, there's meaning, you know? And I recognize one of the things that I came to again when I was in college. I think I was a junior, that I recognized that I wanted to have a family. And up to that point, I hadn't really recognized that. But when I recognized that for myself, it really clicked. And I recognized that that was going to be something that, at least that was my hypothesis at the moment, you know, that's something that's going to be meaningful to me. And that has turned out to be something that is meaningful, not imposed on me, not handed to me, but self-made meaning.
Something you chose.
Yeah.
I found since I was diagnosed with a terminal illness almost 4 years ago and started talking about dying out loud, I have found that there's a fascination with talking out loud about death. Not fascination's probably not the right word. I'm not sure what the right word is, but people have been, the reaction from people has been, I didn't know what I expected when I started doing it. I didn't really think it through. I just started doing it. I thought I'd be dead in a year, so I thought I'd just talk about some stuff with what time I had left. But it seemed to give people permission to think about it in different terms and to talk about it out loud and to not be as afraid of it. And I didn't realize that was such a prevalent. I've never really thought about death much until I got a diagnosis like this. And now I think about it a lot because it's imminent. But because I've been looking at it as an atheist with no sense of anything beyond it, this is just the end. When it ends, it ends. And I'm not that concerned about it. And I get asked all the time, are you afraid to die? What do you think happens after you die? All those kinds of questions. And I mean, I wanted to ask you, Dale, since you know you've kind of jumped into this space. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, how have you looked at your mortality personally?
It's been one of the central preoccupations of my life since I was 13 and my dad died. My dad was 45 when he died, and I was 13. And nothing that happens to you when you're 13 is insignificant. It's
no, everything's a big deal.
13, 14. I mean, it's anything that happens right in there. So it became an absolute. I mean, there was really a fascination at the funeral. It wasn't the first time I'd thought about it, but it really kicked it into gear, looking into the casket and recognizing that he wasn't there.
That's a tough age to lose your dad.
It was very hard. It was very hard, and but it was a double. There was a lot of grief that I never got over. I mean, it affected so much of my life. It's affected my own parenting. It's affected my marriage and my. I'm always reading a book about mortality. Always reading. Right now, I think it's called The Hour of Our Death. Big fat 800-page, fantastic, amazing look at the way we've approached mortality for the last 1,000 years. It's by a cultural anthropologist. So yeah, I have. It has always been at the forefront for me, and I spent a lot of time reading the best thoughts of others about it, reading, ancient Greek, thoughts on it, because people have been apparently dying for a long time.
Apparently, it's pervasive. Yes.
Yeah, nothing new. And my favorite philosopher is Michel de Montaigne, 16th century French philosopher, who was obsessed in the same way that I was with the topic, and in looking at it from all different perspectives. And he invented the personal essay. It's absolutely incredible what he did. And Montaigne's essays are some of the best reading I've ever done. It's just fantastic, approachable, everyday, kind of stuff. And one of my favorite passages in it is when he nearly died. He suffered from stones, bladder stones and kidney stones. And so he came near death many times, but the closest he came was in a horse riding accident, when he ran into one of his servants was on a horse, and they collided, and he was thrown from the horse, and his companions thought he was dead. And they couldn't get a pulse. There's no responsiveness, but he survived. 2 hours later, he came to, and then he wrote about the experience. And there was no angels, no tunnel of light, none of that sort of thing. He talked about being sort of semi-conscious and being aware that death was nearby. And he said, I was conscious of a choice that I had. It was as if death was perched on my lips, and I had the choice to push it away or breathe it in. And in his condition, in his weakened condition, so near death, he said he had every inclination to breathe it in. And he had this realization that it's hard to think about death when you are alive and young and vigorous, and it just seems so distant from your current state. But as we approach death, in most cases, unless it's some sort of instantaneous thing, and you're in a weakened state, and you're losing your facility, and you're losing your vigor, it becomes less and less fearful, because it's less and less of a distance, and it becomes something that's actually going to relieve pain instead of causing pain. So it's really, to answer your question, it's just people like Montaigne and others have really helped me think about it in a productive way, to the point where I can certainly say that I'm not afraid of death. I am not afraid of death. I'm afraid of dying, which is different. The idea of transitioning from this thing that I'm so familiar with and comfortable with into a state of non-being, which is just hard to,
hard to fathom, right?
A conscious being cannot understand, non-existence. It's just not, but the actual thing, I fully understand that 30 seconds after I'm dead, I'm going to have no troubles,
Yeah.
and there's also, there's something very, very peaceful and very comforting and satisfying about that idea, that no matter what worries you've got, no matter what is going on in your life, no matter what illness or whatever, there will be an end to it. And that's the total peace of non-existence is something that I try to wrap my head around as much as possible.
Yeah. Those of us in the ALS community talk about these things a lot, because the end of ALS is really, really ugly, and it takes everything from you. And there are a lot of people who get to a place where they just can't stand it anymore. But because of religion, so many of them cannot bring themselves to bring it to an end. This phrase that you can't play God, this notion that the Lord gives and the Lord takes away, and this idea that we have to let people suffer until they cease to breathe is horrendous. And we've got some folks coming on in a few weeks on the show from the Final Exit Network, which is a group that I work with.
Wonderful.
That really gives us options at the end of life. But it's again these religious notions of what death is and what death isn't. I'm wondering, is as a 13-year-old boy, were you tempted to create a narrative where you would see your dad again?
I don't think I ever was. That's a good question. I don't remember ever entertaining. I mean, I considered the idea of heaven or some kind of an afterlife. I always considered it, but I don't remember ever believing it.
Because it's a
Or
pervasive narrative in American culture. I mean, it's just
it
what we
is.
we talk about all the time. You know, we got stairways to heaven and we got
Yeah.
highways to hell, and all these things are in our cultural lexicon.
Yeah. No, it absolutely is. I don't know. And I may be wrong about that. I mean, it could be that there was a time when I really embraced it, but I don't recall that.
It wasn't a
Um,
pervasive thought. Oh my God, my dad's
no.
gone, and I need to believe that I'll see him again. Because that's a big draw in the
Yeah.
religious world. I want to see my mom again. I want to see my child again. I want to see my brother again. So I need to believe that I will. And so we
Yeah.
create
It
these
just seems,
stories.
yeah, it seems really reasonable to think that I would have gone there. And I just don't
But
remember
you
doing
didn't.
that.
You don't remember
No,
that. That's interesting. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it was one of the hypotheses to me. It was one of the possibilities. And I
Right.
just really wanted to know what was real, but I don't remember having that strong emotional pull toward it.
Hmm. Well, you were a free thinker at an early age.
Yeah, I mean,
Uh,
I really think that it was, Sagan got to me hard,
yeah,
early on.
good.
He,
Good for
that idea,
Carl.
and the other thing, one of the things that was so great about his example is that Carl Sagan wanted nothing more than to know that there's life elsewhere in the universe. That's what he wanted more than anything.
Right.
And so, but he would not embrace evidence that was insubstantial, evidence that
Right.
was not, backed up um, by science, by something that's repeatable. And people would ask him all the time, don't you want there to be aliens? Don't you want there to be life elsewhere? And he said, more than anything, I want to know that that's true, but I want to know that it's true
Yeah.
only if it is true. I don't
Yeah.
want to go that direction just because I want to believe that. And that was an example that came to me really young of that kind of intellectual integrity and the recognition that there's no real value in
Right.
embracing something that's only there because you wish it
Yeah.
were so.
Can't be verified.
Yeah.
We've got some super chats. I missed them. Genevieve, can you grab those for us?
Yes, of course. Yeah, I think the first one we missed was our fantastic heathen Kim Possible 666. Hey, Dave, Genevieve, and Dale. Thanks for all you guys do. Sorry I missed last week. One word, dentist. I am more sorry that you missed last week than you might be. Thank you so much. We also have Anton Gomez. Thank you for the 39 Mexican pesos. Hi, Dave. Hope you're doing well. Some of us aren't. Oh,
Sorry, Anton. Hang in there, buddy.
Hang in there. And also Darren, thank you so much for your $9.99 super chat. Rough day today for me and my Parkinson's, but y'all always bring a smile to my face. Much love as always.
Thanks, Darren.
Thank you so much. And Will Judy, of course.
Hey, Will.
Thank you. $20. I love it when adults converse. You three are brilliant. Oh, shucks.
Oh, you're too kind.
Too kind. Sorry, go ahead, Dave.
No, you go ahead. I was just going to give the phone number again. 217-375-9933 if you want to talk to us.
There can be 4 adults on the line.
Yes, if you're an adult.
Yeah. Just really quickly, Dave, before you moved on, Dale, you just made me sort of think of something about how, I often say that we can't, choose our beliefs. We either believe something or we don't. But I do think that there's, particularly for people who don't find the need to ask those questions that you have your whole life, it does seem like their beliefs are perhaps influenced more so by wants and emotional needs than for for evidence. I'm wondering if you could sort of expand upon anything in that realm that you've noticed throughout your life and your work.
Yeah, I think that's, I have a lot more sympathy and empathy for people in that situation than I used to. I think I went through the kind of snotty phase, late adolescent, whatever. First, my initial phase was that I thought there were only two atheists in the world. There was Madeline Murray O'Hare and me. That was it. And so I actually went through a long time thinking I must have gotten something wrong. And it really wasn't until, college, when I just kind of felt like, oh my gosh, the whole thing falls apart when you really, go after it. And then I kind of got into the snotty, phase of feeling I was smarter than everybody else. And I found my way out of that. I mean, I got to a place where I, recognized that I've been lucky for whatever reason to not feel that need, to not be afraid. I think it's a very natural human thing to be afraid. And there are lots of things I'm afraid of, but the things that would drive me to religious consolation, just I had, the economic and the parenting stability, and the, came from a stable home, and all the various advantages that allowed me to just sort of breathe and ask questions and let them lead where they lead. An awful lot of people don't have those advantages. And if somebody doesn't have those advantages, I just think I can't look down on somebody for that. I would be an asshole to do that. And I think it's a recognition that that I'm the freak. I'm the one who's in a position that is not normal, and I shouldn't sneer at other people who have this very natural human reaction to mortality, to the lack of justice, to the difficulty of meaning, to the difficulty of just being a person. So yeah, I have I recognize that that's where a huge amount of the religious impulse comes from. And the very moment that we solve those problems, as a species, then I'm fine to, say that people need to let go of that stuff, but we haven't solved those problems. So, in bits and pieces we have, but, basically the best I can hope for is that people choose the non-toxic versions of religion. Don't hurt other people, don't hurt themselves. But the overall thing, the whole umbrella, I get it.
So you're saying that as long as these human needs are not being met somewhere else, then we're going to have religion in our midst.
I think so.
In some form.
In some form. Yeah. I think it's, I really like the direction it's going. When you look at Gen Z, when you look at younger millennials, I like like my kids are non-religious, but they don't have much of a problem with religion itself, because their peers that they've grown up with who are religious are not like the religious peers that I grew up with. They don't proselytize. They don't push it on other people. They are not dogmatic. They tend to be LGBTQ friendly. They tend to think that climate change is a real thing. They tend to be progressive in all of their humane politics. And so that it's just hard to really push back in the same way against that expression.
Yeah, I've heard you say, correct me if I get this wrong, beliefs, values are more important than beliefs.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things.
I love that idea, because there are people, as you just were mentioning, as you were alluding to, there are people who believe in a God or some kind of a deity. They at least they give lip service to it, or they may identify as a Christ follower or someone who admires Jesus, but they're not particularly dogmatic in any sense of the word. As you said, they're not imposing on other people. They're not marginalizing people who disagree with them or are different from them. they're not toxic, as you said.
Yeah.
And you're fine with cohabitating with those folks.
Oh,
You,
literally in one case. I mean, the place that I used that phrase a lot was in my book about mixed marriages, religious, non-religious mixed marriages, because my wife was a Christian when we got married. She was a Southern Baptist.
oh,
Her uncle and stepfather and grandfather were Southern Baptist ministers. She was baptized into the church as an adult. Her parents met at a Baptist college. She prayed every day. She went to church every week. I went to church with her for the first several years of our marriage as an atheist. And it was never a problem because our beliefs were different, but our values were very much the same. She was really a member of the religious left, LGBTQ affirming, didn't believe that I was going to hell, accepted evolution. Our values, the actual values, the things that we held as good, as opposed to the beliefs that we had, the things that we thought were true about the universe, our values were absolutely aligned. And then, she also thought that God was running things and that he had sent his son to save us and those sorts of, she fit those things together in a way that I didn't. But that didn't matter. It never comes up, in a daily, but if she was anti-gay, or if she thought I was going to burn in hell, that would come up.
That would be a problem.
That would be a problem on a daily basis for just sort of mutual respect. And it was simply never an issue for us. So,
did she find herself in conflict, though, with the values of her stated church? Because those are not Southern Baptist ideals. They've got
no, they're not
bylaws and doctrines which really are in opposition against those ideas. So did she feel a conflict in that regard?
They have a thing called the Baptist Faith and Message, which is the statement of the beliefs of the denomination. And the thing is that you're never confronted with those. I mean, you have to pull them up on the website pretty much, which I did when I was writing the book. And I asked her at this, she eventually left the church after 13 years after we were married. She decided that she was a secular humanist, but which changed almost nothing between us. People always say, "Oh, you must have really celebrated." It didn't change much. But I pulled that up and I said, "I'm just curious. Can you look at each one of the statements here of belief and say, when you were a Christian, which of these did you think was true? Which did you support?" And she went down and sort of, identified each one. Yes, I think that. I thought that Jesus was my savior and, that sort of thing. No, I didn't believe that people who didn't believe that went to hell. No, I didn't believe that people had to be straight, all those sorts of things. So, it's perfectly possible and common for people to believe things that are utterly in conflict with their denominations. I mean, U.S. Catholics are, holy cow. U.S. Catholics have nothing in common with the Catechism. I mean, most of them.
Oh, yeah.
They were ahead of the general population in gay marriage. They were actually 6 points ahead of the general population in supporting gay marriage. So, it's mostly just the ability to. The churches are very smart, I think, about that. We went to the church that we attended when we lived in the Twin Cities. Was called Wooddale Community Church. And you had to really dig to find out that it was aligned with the Baptists.
Oh, wow.
They just took it out of the name because it was inconvenient.
A lot of churches are doing that. Yeah, they're distancing themselves from the Baptist label because it's so toxic. Yeah. Now that makes sense. I've got friends who identify as progressive Christians. I recently heard from an old friend who was in church with me years ago in Nashville when I was we were in the same church, and he was on staff at one satellite congregation, and I ended up being on staff at another satellite congregation. And we ended up both leaving that church in very difficult circumstances. And it really took a toll on us. I hadn't heard from him in years, and then I got an email out of nowhere. And he was very kind. It was very kind and good email. He's always been a kind person. He identifies he's not evangelical anymore, and he believes that that brand is toxic and dangerous, which I agree with. But he identifies as a Christ follower, as someone who wants to emulate the best parts of Christ as he can find them.
Yeah.
And I just don't have a problem with that. I find that those people, and I know we've had this conversation before, Genevieve, on this show, and we often get pushback because there are people who want to just say, no, you can't believe that stuff. You have to denounce this idea that there's religion, because if you allow them, and I want to get your take on this, Dale. If you allow, not allow is not the right word, but if we embrace those who still use the label Christian in whatever form they would consider it, is it giving oxygen to the whole brand when we see, especially in this day and age of Christian nationalism, pushing itself forward in this country and literally trying to take the country over by any means necessary? If we embrace those who identify as Christians, are we giving oxygen to the more dangerous and toxic forms of the brand? How do you answer that particular claim?
Well, the answer is, for me, that if we have allies against that Christian nationalism, if we have allies against bigotry and racism, who share those values, which are much more powerful than beliefs, but they happen to have a different set of framing ideas,
right,
that they believe, and we push them away and we alienate them and we say that we don't want you on our team, that just seems ridiculous to me. It just seems
here.
It seems
if I could clap, I would.
To me. Yeah.
I can't clap very well, but
yeah, it seems impractical. If you just want to put it in a strictly pragmatic sense, it's not the way to get things done. We're fighting
on the same team.
We're fighting on the same team.
We've got huge battles in front of us.
Yeah,
for human rights and decency and fighting against bigotry and hatred, and a threat to our democracy. And I don't think I'm overstating that. And if like you said, if we can link arms with someone who happens to identify by a different label than us, but has equal values to us, then my God, we have to do it. We need everyone we can get.
Yeah. And I do think it's kind of funny that we imply that we have the power to, deprive them of oxygen or give them oxygen or whatever. There's sort of this, we need a little more humility about
how
that.
arrogant do you have to be, right?
Yeah. And the people who have this right are, again, our kids. It's it's Gen Z and younger millennials, who it just doesn't occur to them, most of them, to push away their friends, who have a different set of beliefs, because they're just not, it's actually similar to, it's kind of a good sign because it means there's been a huge amount of progress. But it's kind of similar to, if you have people who fought in the African Americans who fought in the civil rights movement, and fought for these gains that we got over the course of decades, and then their kids turn to them and say, "Why is it always about race with you?"
Yeah,
or feminists who fought for equal rights for women all through the 60s and 70s and 80s, all this, and then they raise girls who say, "Why is it always about gender with you?" And it's maddening. It's got to be maddening to these parents. But on the other hand, it's kind of a good sign because it means that there's been enough progress that they actually are able to say something like that. So if my kids come to me, which they have in their various ways, when they, see me working on a book or, talking about something or whatever, and they roll their eyes and it's like, why is it always about religion with you? Well, it's because their experience, their lived experience of religion is radically different from what mine was.
It's
when
a non-issue for them. Right.
Yeah, and that's good.
Well, Genevieve got into this. Hey, Derek Cruz, thank you, brother. Great show tonight. Thank you. I agree. Great guest. Genevieve, share with us again why you got in this space as a cradle atheist. I mean, I think Dale would find this fascinating, but because here you are on these kinds of shows when you're one of those that it should be, a non-issue. Why am I even getting involved with this fight that you guys have?
Yeah, I mean, to try to cut the long story short, I mean, I grew up with, staunch atheist parents who were big believers in education in San Francisco, where there wasn't really, like, I didn't really realize that homophobia was an issue until I moved to the East Coast,
Right.
In junior high school. And that was also my first introduction to Christians actually, talking about it and people asking about what church I went to. And I thought that was weird. And I had my own, angsty, I'm better than you, taunting atheist phase. But granted, I was like 12. I think that's kind of what all 12-year-olds are like about something.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But eventually, I moved to the Bible Belt, and suddenly it wasn't just this thing that people might ask you about, but it's not a big deal. It's like, no, this is a very big deal. And it was the first time that I felt like I was in the minority, being somebody who didn't just not believe in God, but also believed that evolution was real and that the earth is almost 5 billion years old. And all of these things that I took for granted, this had happened, really came to a head in 2020 with the pandemic. And I had made that connection that the people in my life who didn't believe in evolution, who didn't believe in an old earth, also didn't really believe in the coronavirus or vaccines.
Right.
And they believed that Jesus would protect them. And couple that with, I moved to the Bible Belt in 2016 and seeing what it has done to American politics. And in my, county that went 70% for Donald Trump, I got a job in politics and realized I can't understand my friends, their families. I can't understand my constituents or this country unless I understand what the fuck is going on with this thing called, white American evangelical Christianity.
Yeah, right.
So she's one of those young ones that decided to get involved in a fight that really wasn't hers. Those of us who came out of that world, have been the ones who have said, no, we have to expose the toxicity of this brand because it's doing damage to people. And we've seen the damage. We've been on the battleground, so to speak, and we've seen the people being just dismantled by this toxic faith and the trauma that we've seen them suffer. So yeah, Genevieve, I know a lot of other young people who didn't come out of it, but have decided to get involved in it because they see that the stakes are really high.
Yeah.
And I really applaud that. We've got a call. I think that the screener is done with the call. Bree, are we ready to take that call? I do want to get, the time goes fast. I do want to talk about Only Sky and especially your view of media and communication. What's real news and what's fake news, and how do we know the difference, and how do we communicate in this world anymore with people who have different sources of truth? What do we do, Dale? Help us here.
Oh, we got 7 minutes. We can do that.
No, we've got 30 minutes. We go till an hour and a half. If you.
Oh, great. Oh, good. Okay.
So you do have time to solve all the
problem.
problems.
Yeah.
So you've got a half an hour to solve all these problems, Dale. But let's take this call from Bree in Iowa. Zer Dominion. Hey, Bree.
Hello.
How are you doing? You're on with Dave, Genevieve, and Dale McGowan. Thanks for calling. What is on your mind tonight?
Oh, well, you were talking about Christian nationalism a bit ago. And it just kind of reminded me that, like when I was a kid in the church in the 1990s, dominionism is what they called it then, but it was basically a known heresy and something that was like a lot of churches around me avoided and shunned. And yet, like somewhere around 2005 to 2010, all of a sudden they just forgot that and just embraced it, which was really weird for me to watch because that was about the same time I was leaving the church.
You're right. I remember that term when you mentioned it now, dominionism. It was a fringe element of Christian, evangelical Christian faith. And you're right, Bree. It was condemned. It was like we looked askew at it and said, no, this is not right. They're perverting the message of the gospel. But you're right, and it shifted. And I don't know. Do you have any idea why?
The only thing that I can really think of that might have politically moved them would be maybe Obama being elected and the, panic about, because a lot of evangelicals in particular really bought into that nonsense about him being a Muslim. And that's when we had a lot of people started talking about Sharia law in the United States. That's the only thing I can think of that might have started shifting it.
It's certainly shifted. You're right. It has become openly embraced. Dale, help us with this, because do you remember that, Dale? I mean, you weren't. I was in the church in the 90s, and Bree's right. It was anathema. You didn't. Dominionism was looked at as almost like cultish ideology. What shifted?
Well, I think I do think Obama certainly kicked it into overdrive because he one of the things that the fundamentalist mind is most comfortable with is categories, the idea, categorical thinking, and the idea of a black president, the idea, when Obergefell came through, and the idea that gay marriage could be recognized, all of that, women in the workplace, it's all category violations. It's all something that takes the neat divisions of the world and makes them fuzzy. It makes them less distinct. So I think that's part of it. But really, we've got a number of sociologists writing for Only Sky, and they've tackled this question in a couple different ways. And the general consensus seems to be that it's the long death rattle of that perspective, that there's a recognition that's been in that community. There's been a recognition for some time that they were losing their majority, that they were losing their grip on power. And it's begun to accelerate recently, really dramatically accelerate, but it was already going on in 2005 and 10. And that's when you need to scare people. That's when you really need people to react in a way that is very sort of end times, very much more dogmatic and apocalyptic. And so I think that's a lot of what's driving it, is that feeling of, so much of the conservative mindset is built around loss, right? It's built around a feeling of either losing something now or having lost something. Make America great again. Go back to where we were. Go back to the 1950s when everything was great for everybody.
If you're white and male.
If you're white and male.
And straight.
Yeah. So that the Garden of Eden, the Garden of Eden story is the perfect example of the whole mindset that we have lost perfection. We've lost paradise. And it's just becoming much more evident in the media, in commercials. I remember when JCPenney first had a gay couple in in one of their ads, and everyone exploded. So I think it's sort of been a cynical taking advantage of that trend as much as anything by the leaders in that community, taking advantage of the fear that comes out of that shift.
Yeah, they are a minority, though, aren't they? Their numbers are shrinking. Tell me they are, Dale. Just humor me.
Oh, they're dramatically shrinking. Yeah,
right.
They're dramatically shrinking. One of our writers goes by the pen name Captain Cassidy, and she is. Yeah, Cassidy's been following that community for years in great detail and with great personality. It's just a fantastic
she's awesome.
writer. Yeah. And she's the one to look to because she reports on their annual reports, the Southern Baptist Convention, the annual reports that come out every year, and how they dance around the numbers, how they take the numbers and dance. And so no, it's longstanding. And of course, the chart goes like this: the declining white evangelical, and the rocketing non-religious, which is currently at 29% unaffiliated in the United States. And, Gen Z is approaching 50%. So they see these numbers. Their
numbers are shrinking, but they disproportionately have power, it seems.
Yeah, because they built the structures that allow them to retain the power far beyond their, and they motivate their base. Their base turns out.
Yeah.
You know, when you mentioned voting at the beginning, I was so glad you did, because so much of this is about turnout. We've got the numbers to achieve whatever we want to achieve.
Yeah.
And they simply have the organization.
If there'll ever be an accepted election again, I mean, that's another whole issue.
Yeah.
And that gets back to news and media and what's true and what's not true and communication. And those are some big issues that we're facing now. And I think you probably know that better than anyone. That's the world the water you swim in.
Right.
Yeah, that's a great point, Bree. I appreciate you bringing that up. If you can figure out how to crush that Christian nationalism movement, would you let us know?
Oh, it'd be nice. It's taken over all my relatives.
Has it? Yeah. I've got a lot of that. You got a lot of family. Yeah, I do too.
Whatever you can do in Iowa, because speaking of, disproportionate power, you're in a very important state. So, not to put all the pressure on you, but thank you.
Yeah.
For being
Well, it
here
was when I was listening to my relatives talking at my cousin's wedding and just listening to them that I realized, because they were coming from like all across Iowa and they go to completely different types of churches and stuff. And I was just like, oh, Trump's going to win Iowa. And it turned out to be true.
Yeah.
So unfortunately.
Yeah, there's a lot of states where it's pretty bleak looking at this point, but the tide is turning. It's just a slow turning ship, if you will. But that was a great observation on the dominionism.
I'm hopeful we can get rid of Kim Reynolds this year. That'd at least be nice.
Yeah. Do what you can. Mobilize the young ones. Get them out to vote. Get them off their couches and video games and get them out to vote. So we need them. We need them bad. Thank you for your call, Bree.
All right. Thanks.
Take care. Let's jump to another call. Hang on, wait a minute. Okay, good. We've got Steve Ironside in Ontario, recovering from religion. Hello, Steve. Did you have something you wanted to share with Dale?
I do, but Dave, it was really nice meeting you at BajaCon.
Oh, yeah. Hey, Steve. Yeah, you were at BajaCon. Good, man. I didn't recognize the name. Thanks. Yeah. It was a great conference.
Oh, yeah, no worries. Oh, it was amazing. It was excellent. All the people that were there and the brunch cruise we did, it was phenomenal.
Yeah.
So I just want to say hi, Dave. Hi, Genevieve, and hey, Dale.
Hey.
Dale, you have helped me immensely in my marriage and with my kids, with all of your resources on, raising free thinkers and all that.
That's great. Thank you.
You probably don't know the name, but I was the guy that sent you all that stuff from the. I sent you the Genesis pictures and the.
I do. It was phenomenal. It was amazing. Yes, it's fantastic. It's
you've been helping me for so many years.
Yeah, these are signed pictures and CDs. That was a fantastic gift. I really appreciated that.
Yeah, no worries. I just because of your podcasts on the How Music Does That. And I knew that you were a fan of those specific bands and everything. So I was like, oh, yeah, this would be a perfect thing to send. But, it's just
amazing.
I just, I have to tell the world. And with, recovering from religion, I'm always sharing your resources with everyone with the, parenting beyond belief, raising free thinkers, especially the podcast, because, it's 17-minute little snippets that you can kind of share with people on specific issues that they're dealing with, raising their kids. The 9 best practices for doing that in a, for raising free thinkers, just amazing. And it's just been, my life has changed, 180 degrees because of your content. So
that's just amazing. That is just amazing to hear. It's great to hear your voice. We've been in touch. We've actually been in touch for years, right? In one way or another, it's been years.
Probably like 4, 5, 6 years. Yeah. And it was because of you that actually I was able to, get beyond the issues I was having with religion when it comes to like my marriage and all that stuff. So it enabled me to, reach out and become a part of RFR. And then from there, it took me about 2 years within RFR to be able to tell my spouse that I was actually volunteering for that organization. and just
Right.
everything along
Yeah.
the way, and reading the In Faith and in Doubt book,
Yeah.
and applying those things to my marriage. It just, now she's come leaps and bounds. A little bit of a background for the listeners. I'm an atheist. I've been an atheist for pretty much my entire life. But I married a Christian who, wasn't really that outspoken about it, but definitely was a part of her life. And a few years in, I, mentioned that, after we were already married, I mentioned that I was non-religious, and it didn't go so well at first. And then I stumbled across Dale's content and was able to, apply all the stuff that he taught in the books and podcasts, and I was able to change things around. And she's she's come leaps and bounds. She's willing to tell people that I'm a non-believer, and that's something that she would never have done before. She even told me that if she'd known that when we met, she probably wouldn't even give me a second chance. So
Right.
Wow. That's awesome.
That's just fantastic to hear. I just really appreciate you sharing that.
Well,
yeah,
Steve,
for sure. No, I'm just saw that you were on tonight, and I thought I'd give a call in. And
yeah, we're glad you did.
Talk to
I'm
Dave
glad
again. And
yeah, I'm glad to talk to you. Funny, Dale, he was at you were working at the RFR booth there with Todd, right?
yeah, with Todd. Yeah.
Yeah. But I
Yeah,
was
so
sitting.
that was
So
awesome news.
yeah, Dale, I was going to tell you, Dale. Hammett Mehta is one of your chief writers on Only Sky, and probably produces as much or more content than anyone. And I can tell you why, because that whole weekend, I was sitting our table was positioned right beside where Hammett was sitting for most of the time. He had his computer plugged in, and when he wasn't speaking or listening to a speaker, he was writing. I couldn't figure out what he was doing, but he was constantly working on his laptop. And then I realized, oh my God, he's putting out 3 articles a day for Only Sky, or however many he does. He is a machine when it comes to putting out content.
There's nobody like him, and it's always to a T. It's always incredibly well written. It always has an angle that is interesting and special, different from what other people are reporting on. He is a pro. He's an absolute pro. Yeah,
and well researched, and everything is yeah. He's just, you guys go read Hammett on Only Sky if you haven't been doing that.
Yeah.
You'll thank me later, because his content is just great. And so that was funny that you mentioned that from the BajaCon conference, because it made me remember Hammett sitting over there just working away constantly. Well, Steve, it was really good to hear from you.
Hammett is that it was awesome. Thank you so much for allowing me to call in. I just want to share one final thing about Hammett. Here in Canada, our military has just allowed humanist chaplains to be in the chaplaincy, and Hammett did an interview with the very first one. Her name is Marie Claire Kadij, and so I was able to reach out to her, talk to her, and then she said, give Hammett a big hug for me. So when we're at the conference, I gave him a big hug, and so that's from Marie Claire Kadij. So.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's awesome. Yeah. That was a good time. Well, I'll probably be there again next year, so I'll get to see you again, Steve.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll see you again next year for sure.
Okay, buddy. Thanks for calling.
Thanks for calling, Steve.
All right. Thank you so much. Yeah, and thanks so much, Dale, for all you've done, and keep up the great work.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Isn't that gratifying?
No, I just can't.
It's overwhelming, isn't it?
It's overwhelming. I can't. How do you get used to that? Kind of thing. It's just
every time I get an email or a message or anything that's something I've done or something I've said has benefited someone. It's just there's nothing like it. So that was great. I'm glad he called to let you know that. Zap Brannigan, another Antichrist donation. We're going to hell, Dale. We're going to hell. Thanks for your hard work towards reason, Dale. Love you, Dave and Genevieve. I missed the rest of it, but thank you, Zap. You're thanks for making my week a little brighter. You're doing the anti-Lord's work. Yes, we are. So speaking of Only Sky, what brought that about? I know it kind of sprang forth from Patheos. Give us a little bit of the background there, what you're doing, why you're doing it. Yeah, give us the lowdown there, Dale.
Sure. Yeah, it actually it was in the works before the Patheos meltdown. It was an idea for a secular media company that came to pass while I was at Patheos. But Sean Harden is an entrepreneur and an atheist in California who had just recognized the need for this, that there was no dedicated media company expressing the secular perspective. Excuse me. And so he did his legwork and,
because Patheos was a multi-faith platform, if I remember. It had an evangelical, non-religious, Catholic, all the different labels,
all the
right?
Mormon channel, the Buddhist channel, yeah, the whole deal.
Okay.
And I enjoyed working with Patheos for a great deal initially, and then it was actually acquired by an evangelical company, and that actually went fine for a while, despite the obvious. But then toward the end, things got very strange, and they began asking that writers no longer criticize other worldviews, and that they just talk about their own worldview and how nice it is to be whatever you are, and no more talking about politics. So there were all these very specific, demands that came about at, I guess it would have been the beginning of 2020. I think. Am I getting the year wrong?
Yeah.
2021. It was the beginning of 2021.
Okay.
Yeah, it was the end of 2020 that this happened. And so that was odd. And unrelated to that, Sean came to me and said, hey, I'm building this secular media company. Would you like to come aboard? And because he'd seen that I was, the work I did with Patheos and some of the other stuff. And so we worked on this for 9 or 10 months through 2021, and started just pulling together the best people that we could find in writing and podcasting and all the creative work. And the idea was to not build a blog network, but to really try to build a journalistic enterprise and get people exploring. The way we put it is exploring the whole human experience from the secular perspective. So we didn't just want to have a place that's doing religious criticism. That's always a part of it.
Yeah.
But not just religious criticism and church-state separation and galaxies. That's kind of our thing. That's always going to be a part of it. But we also, everything changes when you have a secular perspective. It's not just those things. History is different when you start looking at it from a secular perspective. Politics is different. Biology is different. The arts can be a different experience when you're thinking of it as a human creation rather than something that's inspired by God. So comedy, philosophy. We wanted to have a platform that would explore the whole human experience. Once you decide that there's one world and one life, what then? What is the world like? What is the experience of the world like? So we now have 104. I think we're at 104 creatives on the team. Sociologists and psychologists and comedians and philosophers and Hemant writing about religious and non-religious news. It's an absolutely extraordinary team. And I am chief content officer, so basically editor in chief. Pulling that together, we have 3 podcasts launched and 2 more podcasts launching in the next month. And we've got a TikTok account going now, and YouTube. And, so we're starting to branch out to off-platform areas as well. But it's just a really fascinating and engaging. It's the best job I've ever had.
Awesome.
I have never, ever enjoyed myself so much. It's absolutely exhausting. I'm working like 65 hours a week. But I go to bed happy, which is exhausted and happy. Because there's this challenge in trying to figure out what's the secular perspective on the whole human experience? How can we bring something unique? Because the New York Times is secular, right? The CNN is secular, but in a general sense, we're secular in an explicit sense that everybody involved in the operation has a naturalistic point of view. Everybody involved in the operation believes that there's one world and one life that we have to live. So that frames everything we do. And being a part of, trying to figure out how, what the values are that shape that, what the approach is like that gives it that distinctively secular voice without having it on the surface all the time. Because we don't need people saying, this is humanistic because of such and such. We don't need to say, this is our secular, just do it. Just express it. Just explore it. And it's in the doing that the secular perspective emerges. And it's really the, excuse me, the most satisfying work I've done.
Yeah. It's designed for a secular audience, but is it put out in such a way? I think it is, but I want you to speak to this because in looking at the pages, it doesn't blast atheist on every page or secular or humanist or whatever. It doesn't give a label of any kind. It's just, this is the article. This is the news. This is the perspective. What's a Christian going to think coming across that? I mean, is it designed so that it's user friendly to a Christian who discovers it?
Yeah, the answer is it partly depends on what article you land on, because one of the things that we're trying to do is meet people where they are.
Yeah.
So some people are red meat anti-theists, and that's where they are. That's what they're, I was that at one point. I'm not anymore, but I'm not going to go into this insisting that everybody be right where I am, in my perspective.
Right.
So we have searing religious criticism and, following Christian nationalism and all of that is there. But then we also have people writing about secular spirituality. And we have people writing about social justice issues and writing comedy and writing about folklore and mythology. So somebody from, I'm sorry.
It's all right.
I don't know what's going on there.
Yeah.
So somebody can approach any one of those articles,
right,
and get a lot out of the piece itself. One of the things that we like to encourage, that we talk about, is the earthquake of perspective. It's just shaking up what it is that we think is true. Writing a piece that challenges our assumptions. That's something that is very secular. That's something that we're all about. And so we try to get people from a number of specializations and a number of perspectives who are doing that, who are finding ways to, we have had a sociologist who wrote an absolutely fantastic piece. Will Gervais wrote a piece about the fact that atheists are pretty sure that people can be reasoned out of their faith, right? We're pretty sure that if we just give them another argument, that we can reason them out of that. And he actually brought the sociology. He brought the receipts, his actual research that shows that isn't nearly as effective as we would like to hope it is.
Yeah.
So
just give them the truth and they'll believe it. No.
Right. Exactly. Just hammer it home, street epistemology and all these sort of things that I love to watch and follow, but it doesn't have the same effect that we think. So it's that kind of a thing that challenge. I wrote a piece called "Why Aren't You a Trump Supporter?" And it basically suggests that the reasons that people are supporting Trump, basically it comes down to, if I change places with my cousin who is a Trump supporter, if I had the same upbringing, the same experience, the same education, the same parenting, all the things that he is. I love this guy, by the way. but he is an absolutely diehard Trump supporter.
Yeah.
If we traded places in those ways, I would have supported Trump. The idea that we are somehow starting from the same place and he's just made a bad decision is really misleading, and I don't think it's helpful. So these are the sorts of things that we try to do, is to really get into a topic and shake up the perspective of people. And then
valuable.
also we have pieces that are, that are funny or wonder inducing. We spent a lot of time with the asteroid, the DART asteroid smack that happened what is it, last month now, right?
Yeah. You had a great comical piece called "The Lazy Atheist." I thought that was great.
Oh yeah, well, that's a question I've always had. Why is it that it's so easy to be a lazy believer, but we have
to do the work. We have to know why we have to know why we don't believe. They don't have to know why they believe.
Yeah, exactly right. So,
but it's such valuable stuff, because I think the communication issue that I was mentioning earlier, that we talk past each other. And I see that over and over. I hosted the Atheist Experience yesterday, or co-hosted it. And that's always just a mind-numbing experience, and frustrating, because I know it has benefit for people who are watching, but the actual callers, there's no communication going on. We're just talking past one another, and I think that a problem we as atheists can face, if we're not careful, we can exchange one worldview bubble for another. I came out of the evangelical world, which is just a very insular bubble. You don't ever run into anyone who's not in that bubble. You don't communicate with anyone who's not in that bubble. You never hear a conflicting thought or opinion or worldview. So you think everyone thinks the way you do, and anyone who doesn't think the way you do is obviously wrong.
Right.
And we can come out of that world, out of that bubble, just jump right into another one, where
absolutely,
I'm an atheist and everyone else is wrong, and I'm going to show you why you're wrong, and I'm going to prove my point to you over and over again. And if you're just an agnostic, that means you're a baby atheist, and you need to come on up and get your big boy pants on.
Right.
And if you're hiding behind the word humanist, then and I've been guilty of that. And we just need to stop it and realize that we've got to find better ways to communicate. I think that what you're doing at Only Sky is a great tool in that tool chest. We need more of that. We need more of a creative way to engage one another, and not just stay in our camps and lob hand grenades over the wall at the other camp. It's just not effective. I'm frustrated with I think the caller was talking about her family who's, Trumpers. I've got a lot of family. They live in Texas, and for the most part, they're Trumpers. I don't know if any of them are down the QAnon rabbit hole. I'm afraid to ask. But I do know that they're diehard Trump supporters, like your cousin. And these are good people, and they're not stupid.
Yeah.
But I don't know how to communicate with them, because they seem to have a different source of truth than I do. They seem to have different. How do you, as a media expert, and I'll call you that, how do you identify how do you help people identify what's actually true and what's not? Because we're all dependent upon some kind of news source. If I read a story today about something that happened in Ukraine or in Florida with Ron DeSantis, I'm dependent upon someone who wrote that to give me accurate information.
Right.
And then someone else on the other side of the aisle is going to tell me, no, that's not true. That information you got is false, and I've got the real story here.
Yeah.
How do we bridge that gap, Dale? Because it's tearing this country apart.
Well, I mentioned that freshman seminar that I taught at the college in St. Paul for many years, built around writing and critical thinking. Fantastic interdisciplinary seminar that a bunch of us taught. And so we addressed questions like that. And one of the things I would do is I give the students a number of statements that some of them sounded very reasonable and some of them sounded ridiculous. And I'd ask them if they thought they were true, each one. and then I'd start to reveal something about the statement, like what the source of the statement was. And if they find out that it was in the National Enquirer, or they find out that it was, this was prior to Fox News really being as much of a household word, but
right.
So we would start to parse those things out. And one of the things that we would always come to is that you want to listen to somebody who stands to lose something by lying to you. I want to listen to somebody and believe somebody is telling me the truth if it actually hurts them to lie to me.
That's a good point.
The New York Times consists of a whole bunch of people, regular old people, but they are in a situation where they are going to lose subscribers. They're going to lose advertisers. They're going to lose the support that they've got and the place that they've got in the culture if they start just creating things out of whole cloth. They actually stand to lose something. InfoWars stands to lose nothing if they tell you a lie. They stand to lose something if they tell you something that's boring, or something that's not motivating, or something that doesn't make the other side look like devils. They have a different set of motivations. So if you can look at the source and assess their risk in lying to you, that's kind of a first step, because it gets past the idea that I listen to NPR and I believe NPR because they're good people. No, but it's the same as, sort of the enterprise of science. I don't look at scientists and say these are good people who would never lie to anybody. No, they're in a system that requires them, that will punish them, that will cause them to fail in their careers if they are not meeting a certain standard. They actually have to go through that kind of review. So it's the same thing in the media. You just have to know that they are being held to a standard that they will suffer from if they fail to meet it.
That's a great barometer, I think. Yeah, a great measuring tool. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, it works pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah. I almost wonder, because Dave, I feel like the beginning of your question had quite a bit to do with how to communicate with those other people, not necessarily just parsing out the information for yourself. I wonder if proposing that your relatives or whoever it is that you're engaging with considers that approach to their sources, if that might help in the long run. I'd hope so. I think that's honestly a really brilliant way to sort of break down the ways to just generally parse out whether or not what you're reading is credible, without just going to fact checking or like looking through yourself. But I have this idea about the way that we do persuade and the way that we do connect with and engage with people who believe things that we might consider absolutely so far from reality. And Dale, if I'm wrong, you can please push back. But we've talked about this earlier about how, we like to think that we believe things because they're true, and especially within the atheist community, I think that we all like to, for the most part, believe that we are inherently more critical or more logical or more fact-based, or have higher standards of evidence. But I am sure that at the end of the day, we, just like everybody else, is more convinced by our feelings, and we are more convinced by all of these other things that we might be we might think that we're being just purely rational, but there's so much that goes beyond that, and facts do not convince other people. I mean, if I were to go to Thanksgiving dinner with my Trump supporting family members and say, well, did you know that X, Y, and Z happened with the administration? That's not going to say anything. But if I can find out what it is that is emotionally appealing to them and find out the real sort of reasons surrounding how they came to this conclusion, or why they believe in conspiracies, which is largely fear, then you can make some headway to where they might be open to reading some of those figures. But they have to be primed for that. There has to be that emotional connection first, I think.
That is so on the nose for this conversation. It really is one of the most important realizations, and it's it's the great delusion in our own community, is that we are strictly rational. Nobody is. Absolutely nobody is. And we are simply emotionally able to, go, like I said, I was in an emotional position for whatever reason to pursue certain questions, but emotion is still involved. We are still susceptible to that, and we arrive at things that are emotionally driven, and then we frequently find the evidence to sort of support the thing that we wanted to believe anyway. We're approaching it in a much more similar way than we'd like to think, much more similar to the conservative mind. So I think that's really important to recognize.
And we gather around us people who agree with us because it makes us feel good about our position, and it reinforces the ideas that we had that make us feel good. And it's not helping move us forward, though.
No. And I do think, to that point, I wouldn't necessarily want to be an entirely just rational being. If we're thinking about the human experience holistically, you can be completely rational and completely devoid of empathy, completely devoid of all of the qualitative things that are important to consider, like other people's feelings. We're not a bunch of cogs in a machine. There's a lot to be considered that might not be rational, but it's just as important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good stuff. Well, I want to be respectful of your time, Dale. We have reached our ending point. How can people find you? Give us the lowdown on where to go to find what you're doing.
Just go to onlysky.media, and that'll bring you to our homepage, and the menu will take you everywhere in the site. I think you'll like it.
Beautiful site, by the way. Very, very, very easy to navigate. It's easy on the eyes. I'm really looking forward to beginning to write for Only Sky, and
we're really looking forward to having you. Yeah, that's great.
So guys who watch this, folks, if you're not familiar with Only Sky, go there. You'll find all kinds of good content, and some not so good content like mine that'll be there too soon. So, but I'm really looking forward to that, and really glad that we connected and that you guys invited me to contribute. So I'm very happy about that. And thank you for taking time to be on our show tonight. It was a great conversation. And,
it's my pleasure. I really enjoyed it.
I really love what you're doing. Obviously, you've seen from the chat and the calls that it's having an impact on people. So keep doing it, man.
That's great. I'll do my best. Thanks.
And thanks for all our callers, all our chat people, the behind the scenes call screeners and chat moderators, and Ethan for producing the show. You do such great work. Thank you for Patreon supporters. And thanks for being here, everybody. And that's our show for tonight.